Hey, what's up, Elevate78? It's Sunday, April 5th, and this is your online video daily devotional. And we're going to jump to the Gospels now. We've been in the book of Exodus, but this is what the church calls Holy Week, the week that's leading up to Easter Sunday. Easter's next Sunday. This Sunday is what we remember as Palm Sunday. And so the readings this week will all line up with the last week of Jesus' life. And so I've chosen to do some readings from the book of Mark, because why not? You could read any of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, or John. They'll all tell you about the last week of Jesus' life, including his crucifixion and his resurrection. But let's read together from the book of Mark this week. And so the reading for today is Mark 10, starting at verse 32, going through chapter 11, verse 19. If you haven't had a chance to read that, pause the video right now, take a couple minutes to read it, and then come back here and we'll explain what it's all about. And for tomorrow, you want to read chapter 11, verse 20, all the way through the end of chapter 12. And then we'll take it about one chapter a day through the story of the Easter story. Okay, so here's what's going on in Mark chapter 10. Jesus and his disciples are on their way up to Jerusalem. It says, with Jesus leading the way, and the disciples were astonished while those who followed were afraid. And Jesus takes his disciples aside and he says, guys, we're going up to Jerusalem. And to them, this would have been no big deal because they went up to Jerusalem 3 times every year for a festival. They went on foot, so it was a trip. But he says, this time I'm going to be handed over, and the Son of Man is going to be delivered to the chief priests and the teachers of the law, and they will condemn him to death, give him to the Gentiles, who will flog him, spit on him, mock him, and kill him. Jesus is blunt. He just lays it right down out there. But then he says, 3 days later, I will rise from the dead. So right after this, his disciples, James and John, say, okay, Jesus is going to heaven, and we want to be honored in heaven. So Jesus, can we sit at your right side and your left side? And Jesus says, I don't know. Can you do what I'm about to do? They say, oh yeah, Jesus, we definitely can. And Jesus knows that what's really in their heart is they want to be important. Because all this time they've been following him and they've not been important people, but they want positions of honor. And Jesus says this. He says, you know that those who are regarded as rulers of the Gentiles lord it over them, and their high officials exercise authority over them, but not with you. Anyone who wants to be great among you must be your servant, and whoever wants to be first must be the slave of all. And so Jesus is giving them the path towards true greatness. He says it's not to be have others, make something of you and be super powerful over them. He says if you want to be great, you have to be first made the slave of all. What a tough, tough message to hear from Jesus. It's one thing to be Christ-like, but it's another thing to be just like Christ. And we can't do what he did for us. His disciples couldn't do what he was about to do, and we're going to see that again and again as we read through the Gospel of Mark this week. That's why I encourage you during this Easter week to find some movie about the story of Easter and watch it from beginning to end. Because I just think there's nothing like being immersed in those images, those sounds, and watching it on video. There's all kinds of videos about the Easter story on YouTube, and you can find one and follow along. So then what happens on Palm Sunday? Jesus enters Jerusalem. This is a familiar story to many of you, on a donkey. And the crowds greet him as he's coming in because they think, yes, this is our liberator. He's going to overthrow the Romans. He's going to raise up an army, and he's going to be our new king, just like we used to have a king under King David. And they throw their cloaks on the road and palm branches and this kind of thing. And then from chapter 11, verses 15 through 17, it says, on reaching Jerusalem, Jesus entered the temple courts and he began to drive out those who were buying and selling there. He turned over the tables of the money changers and the benches of those selling doves. He would not allow anyone to carry merchandise through the temple courts. And as he taught them, he said, is it not written, my house will be called a house of prayer for all nations, but you have made it a den of robbers. Jesus is jealous that they're using his house for other purposes. He wants the house, the temple, to be only for the glory of God. And we talked about this when we were doing the devotionals in Exodus, that God wanted the tabernacle and all the items inside specially set aside for him. As if he's saying, I am special. I'm the Lord your God. Don't give your worship to anybody else. That's what Jesus is saying here as well. This temple should be special and dedicated only for me. Because what Jesus will prove through the story of Easter is that the titles Lord and Savior They don't belong to ordinary people like you and I. They only belong to Him because only Jesus could do what He's about to do. So keep up with the readings this week. Let's read through the Bible together during this time. Have a great Sunday. We'll see you back here tomorrow.